The year was 2019. I was living on my family's ranch in Northern California. 250 acres of golden, curving hills on Sonoma Mountain. I worked with my mom, and we raised chickens and sheep and horses and cattle. It's the kind of place where, though the work is hard, if you look over your shoulder, you'll always see something striking. 1,000 red-winged blackbirds staring right back at you as they perch on a poplar tree. It's the kind of place where you're as likely to see a mountain lion coming down from the hilltop as you are a drunk person coming up from the road, pulling off to sleep for the night. It's the kind of place where drought will strangle your confidence and leave you uncertain of what to do with your hands. Back in 2019, I would ride my horse to the top of the hill. It was the highest point on the ranch, and if you went there on a clear day, you could see, 40 miles to the south in shining bright red, the Golden Gate Bridge. Back then, I was splitting my time 50-50. Half of the time working on the ranch, and half of the time working on my own music. I would help feed the animals, but I'd also help do things like plan where to put fences. Think about how to get trees to grow back in the eroded creeks. My hands dried out when I planted vegetables in the oil-sucking clay soils. My patience wore thin when yet another lamb wiggled its way out of a fence. And when I wasn't doing ranchy stuff, I would sit in the 1950s aluminum trailer where I lived. I would work tediously over lyrics and chords to try to create something unique to me. Something contemplative and matching with my personality. Something I felt like only I could say. I lived in that aluminum trailer until a herd of pack rats intimidated me back into my mom's ranch house. And music-wise, I was also in a tribute band with my dad. We sang the songs of Americana music legend Lucinda Williams. At first, when my dad was forming the band, he wanted to call it Man-Cinda. I suggested an idea. What if we call it the Lake Charlatans? My idea won out. We would rehearse in my grandmother's basement for hours, pour over the long, long list of Lucinda Williams songs, learn the lyrics as well as I could, learn the chords, so that our 6-piece band could go out and perform.
1, 2, 3.
We played around town at bars and venues. We played good gigs, we played bad gigs. We played long gigs, we played short gigs. We played the kind of gigs where everyone's too drunk, and we played the kind of gigs where everyone is way too sober. I was getting better at being a musician then, and I was getting better at being a ranch manager too. I was hedging my bets. I could make it, I thought, as a part-time rancher, part-time artist. They'd feed into one another, make me stronger at both. But my mind shifted in 2019. It was a difficult year, my third lambing season. I had to go to the barn late at night and early in the morning to check on the sheep and make sure nothing was going wrong. But I didn't always get there in time, and I didn't always do the right thing. There was an older ewe that year who was pregnant with 4 lambs. We had to give her a C-section and rub those lambs awake with towels. They were beautiful, multicolored, red and black, and white. We named them Stracciatella, Katie, Milky, and Ginger. But those 4 lambs, as beautiful as they were, became a burden. I had to bring them into the house to bottle feed them every night. I woke up every 4 hours to bring them their formula. They waddled around the pack and play that we set up for them. But as I was feeding them in the middle of the night, I longed to sleep a normal way. I fantasized about some kind of machine udder that would feed them every 4 hours instead of me. They waddled around like wind-up toys, and they drove me nuts. I struggled with the failures that I encountered with the animals on the ranch. I felt like I wasn't trying hard enough, like I was making too many mistakes. I was afraid people would judge me for my animal husbandry. And I was always trying to learn more about sheep ranching. I would go to seminars and hear about how to take care of a flock. I'd watch people get up in front of the crowd and talk passionately about grass. They'd go over ways to bring native plants back and how to make sure your animal was happy and satisfied. I found what these seminars discussed pretty interesting, but I didn't feel particularly passionate about it ultimately. I couldn't muster the excitement that the other ranchers did about grass regrowth, about the shade of trees, about the soils. I realized that maybe my personality wasn't quite cut out for this ranching thing the way that I thought it was at first. And at that time, my dad presented an idea for our tribute band, the Lake Charlatans. What if we made an album paying tribute to Lucinda, do some recordings with our 6-piece band? I was hungry to learn more about Lucinda's music. Even after spending years performing her songs, I was still peeling back layers of the excellence within her songwriting. Somehow, the music she created was approachable yet complex. It was deep and multifaceted, and I admired that very much. So I thought that doing something a little bit more creative than playing gigs would be great. I dreamed of being a real singer-songwriter. I was picturing myself like one of those people in Heart-Worn Highways. It's a 1975 documentary about singer-songwriters in Texas. I pictured myself just like them, sitting in a circle in some old beaten-up house with the floorboards spaced out. We'd sing songs to one another. We'd talk about the craft, make each other better, and grow our friendships along the way. Then maybe I'd get into a tour bus and play a couple of gigs in places where people wanted to buy a ticket, see me play. So this Lucinda record idea, it wasn't quite right, but it wasn't quite wrong either. There was something to it. Maybe this project could help me peel away and become the singer-songwriter I wanted to be, or at least get me closer to that. Then came a new idea, and it might have been a good idea, and it might have even been a great idea. The idea was, instead of making a cover record, I could do something a little bit more interesting. I could take a road trip to trace the early roots of Lucinda Williams. I could learn more about how she became a great songwriter. I could find people who collaborated with her early on to learn what qualities she had that made her so special. I could visit the places where she grew up in order to understand her world. I could delve into the archives and try to find records of her early work. But at the same time, I had some guilt. To leave the ranch and abandon the dream that my mom and I had worked on together, I didn't know if I could do it. And even more so, what if I tried to get out of this pattern that I had, a 50-50, of not fully committing to music, and it turned out I didn't have the talent. I didn't have enough to offer. I was afraid that if I committed myself fully to music and achieving what I wanted to achieve, I would reveal that I didn't have what it takes. That while I could work hard, there was something wrong with me. But this idea to do a road trip, maybe it was a way to find an answer to those questions that I had about what I was supposed to do. So to begin my search, I decided to look into the newspaper archives. I was looking for articles describing Lucinda's history and maybe some interviews. But in particular, I was trying to find the earliest records of Lucinda's public performances. I was hoping that one of these venues where she performed early on was still around, and that I could visit it on my road trip. First, I found an article about a show Lucinda did in 1978. It was featured in the Jackson, Mississippi newspaper, the Clarion Ledger. She was performing at Poets on Lakeland Drive, 8 p.m. to midnight, Friday and Saturday, a 4-hour gig. But then, I tried to look deeper into Poets if it was still around and if it had become something else. I came upon a Facebook page memorializing a beloved venue and the sadness of the fans with its closure in 2002. Poets. R.I.P. So that wasn't going to work. It looked like the building Poets was in wasn't even around anymore. Turned into some condos or maybe a strip mall. I found another article. March 1981. In this, the calendar described Lucinda performing in Austin, Texas. The venue was the Alamo Lounge where, quote, pinto beans and homemade bread will be served. However, after doing a little more research looking into did this place exist anymore and what happened, I got bad news. Turns out the Alamo Lounge closed later that same year that Lucinda performed. And the whole building had been demolished in 1984. But then I had a break. I found a really cool article that was more difficult to find because instead of being listed under Lucinda Williams, this calendar listed her under Lucinda. And the venue that she performed at was the Hole in the Wall in Austin, Texas. This was in 1974. And I was fortunate to find that the Hole in the Wall had not been demolished, not sold, not turned into thrift shop or apartment buildings. Actually, the Hole in the Wall had survived not only as a building, but as a venue, an active venue with shows that I could visit on my trip. I also wanted an opportunity to find out more about Lucinda's family background. Where did she grow up? What were her parents like? What was her community like? And fortunately, I found out that there would be a rich treasure trove of records on that subject. Lucinda's father was a celebrated poet and professor. His name was Miller, and he passed away in 2015. Fortunately, UT Austin had retained many of the records from his life, letters, old poems. And so, at this place, the Harry Ransom Center in Austin, Texas, I could go and look into these archives. I could pour through the old records from Lucinda's father's life to understand and answer the questions I had about her. I also wanted to find some people to interview. People who had worked with Lucinda very early on when she started playing music. One of my friends, Chuck Prophet, who's a musician, had a tip. He said that his friend, guitarist and producer Charlie Sexton, had actually played with Lucinda really early. It seemed that Charlie had even played with Lucinda when he was just a teenager. She was not much older than him at the time, maybe in her early 20s. And even more exciting was that Charlie and Lucinda played together at that venue, Hole in the Wall in Austin. I had another individual that seemed interesting to interview as well. I found this name as the only person who played on Lucinda's first record, Ramblin'. His name was there in the credits for the record, John Gormado. And after doing a little bit more research, I realized not only did he play on her first record, he also played with her a bunch at live shows in the 1970s at a place called Anderson Fair. And so there was another place, this one in Houston, Texas, and another person to talk to for my road trip. I had one last type of place that I was interested in visiting, a recording studio. I looked around the stories of where Lucinda had recorded early on, and I found out that she made her first set of official recordings in Jackson, Mississippi. Her father had introduced her to a friend of his named Tom Royals. He was a civil rights attorney. He helped link Lucinda to Malaco Studios and had been the producer for Ramblin'. But I found out some very sad news about that studio. In 2011, there was a big tornado. It tore down almost the entire set of buildings at Malaco. However, fortunately, all of the old tapes were kept in a concrete vault. That building had survived, and so had the records of recordings that were made at that very place, maybe even something from Lucinda. Also, I found out that exactly when I was planning this road trip, that the man who had produced her first record, Tom Royals, passed away, November 2019. Fortunately, somebody who was there that very same day, who worked on Ramblin' as an engineer, was still around, and he had helped with the rebuilding of Malaco Studios following the tornado. He was still working at Malaco, and I could go speak with him and visit the studio where they collaborated. I had loaded up my mind with ideas and plans, where I could go and who I could meet. I knew this was my chance to break out of the circle I was riding in. I wanted to be more than just a person putting grain into chicken feeders, more than somebody who thought just about grass. I wanted to be able to create art that reflected the world back to people. Songs that helped people see themselves in a different light or helped them feel something important to them. I wanted to do for others what great musicians like Lucinda Williams had done for me. And in a way, it might sound a little bit trite, but it felt like my destiny. Yet at the same time, I wasn't really sure that I had enough to offer. I wasn't sure that I had enough of the right kind of spirit, the right kind of talent to see the destiny through. But I had small tendrils of faith, a drifting notion that I had what it takes. And regardless, it didn't matter what I thought about myself. I needed a chance to move me forward, draw me past the fence line of the ranch. So I took my 1995 Ford F-250. It had a blue stripe on the side, and I filled it up with Lucinda Williams tapes. I started on the West Coast, embarked on a road trip across the country, and my hope was to visit the venues where she played early on, talk to her early collaborators, and dive into the archives. I wanted to see if there were answers to my simmering questions. Did Lucinda ever doubt herself in the beginning of her career? How did Lucinda become such an incredible writer? Did she ever think that she just, in a moment, a difficult one, wanted to give it all up? What made it worthwhile to her to not give up? What inspiration did Lucinda draw from in order to create such meaningful work? And maybe I could find out a little bit more about what she was like when she was my age. I also hoped a little bit that I could connect with Lucinda directly, that I could ask her these questions that I had about feeling good enough, about how to move forward when you just have a lot of doubt, about how to find a small way to be an artist like Lucinda Williams.
If you're copying someone, you're not saying something that makes you scared to say. You've got to, in my opinion, go inside yourself and pull out what might be scary to say, because it makes you vulnerable.
Here we go.
Thank you.
The infamous tape vault.
Wow.
Represents a lot of years in here.
Look up there, see?
Oh, yeah.
There's your name on both posters.
Sunday nights.
Sunday nights, there
Yeah.
and there. And Lucinda's name too, Lucinda, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back when she used to just play under Lucinda, not Lucinda Williams.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, she just called herself Lucinda. The Williams wasn't on there at all.
Yeah.
What it takes to actually achieve that thing that makes you maybe take a big breath or a little breath or like feel it in your core, that costs something to that person.
I'm Ismay, and you're listening to Finding Lucinda from the Bluegrass Situation. This is an audio documentary about tracing the roots of my musical hero, Lucinda Williams. It's a story about self-doubt and moving forward on a creative journey in spite of uncertainty. Join us for the next episode. Listen where you stream.
Oh, yeah.
There's your name on both posters.
Sunday nights.
Sunday nights, there
Yeah.
and there. And Lucinda's name too, Lucinda, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back when she used to just play under Lucinda, not Lucinda Williams.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, she just called herself Lucinda. The Williams wasn't on there at all.
Yeah.
What it takes to actually achieve that thing that makes you maybe take a big breath or a little breath or like feel it in your core, that costs something to that person.
I'm Ismay, and you're listening to Finding Lucinda from the Bluegrass Situation. This is an audio documentary about tracing the roots of my musical hero, Lucinda Williams. It's a story about self-doubt and moving forward on a creative journey in spite of uncertainty. Join us for the next episode. Listen where you stream.